Hey YouTube, I'm your Network MD, and today we are going to be covering VLAN Trunking Protocols. Alright, so let's get into it. Okay, so one of the important things when I was learning about VLAN Trunking Protocol that I wanted to remember was that it's not a dynamic trunking protocol. It's not a DTP. So I had to train myself to think that, okay, so when I hear the VLAN trunking protocols, I don't need to be associating with it all the things that go under DTP. So VLAN trunking protocol is not what I'm going to be using to configure ports to either become trunks, access, dynamic desirable, or dynamic auto, or no negotiate, which I don't have on there. Okay, so what then is a VLAN trunking protocol? The VLAN trunking protocol is what actually allows you to configure and distribute VLANs across the networks via using a single switch, aka your VTP server. This will help in avoiding errors that will come by having to manually configure the VLANs on each new switch that's introduced to the network, and also allow you to have a central location for managing those VLANs across the network, which is great because otherwise you'd have to go to each and every individual switch and put in all the VLANs that are on the rest of your network so they can use them. So how is this done? The VLAN trunking protocol uses VTP advertisements, VTP sub-advertisements, and VTP requests. The VTP advertisements also contain a revision number, which the switches will look at along with the available VLANs. If the switch will look, if the client switch, the VTP client, which will go ahead in the future in the following slides to define, if the VTP client decides that based off the revision number, and if it's the highest number, higher than its own, it will make a request, a VTP request to the VTP server. The VTP server can send back a VTP sub advertisement, and it will have the details, more details for that those available VLANs, which that switch can take in and then update its own revision number. And so the switches use the revision number as a way to figure out, okay, so which VTP advertisement is relevant to it in deciding whether or not it should update its own VLAN database. So a switch can be configured as either a VTP server, a VTP client, and a VTP transparent. The VTP server would be responsible for managing all the VLANs, as I mentioned above. The client could not manage the VLANs, but it can receive the VTP advertisements and the VTP sub advertisements. So it would see the revision number, and based off that, it can make a request and receive those advertisements. The transparent VTP will transmit the VTP advertisements and VTP requests and VTP sub advertisements, but it will not take them in. It will not make any requests and will not make any changes to its own VLAN database. Alrighty, so in setting up the VLAN, in our next video we'll actually talk about the actual commands that you'll use to set up, but what's important is making sure that your client switches are configured to the same VTP domain as your VTP server. Otherwise, they will not get the VTP advertisements. And also, if you're using a VTP password, that same password that's on the VTP server also has to be configured into your VTP client in order for it to receive the VTP advertisements. VTP pruning. VTP pruning is a way to prevent broadcasts from being transmitted to switches that don't need those broadcasts. For instance, that switch may not have any ports assigned to the VLANs that's associated with that broadcast. So in that case, you'd use VTP pruning to prevent that broadcast from going to that switch. Again, in the next video, we're going to talk more about the actual commands that you will use, but for now, it's just important to know what the VTP pruning is. Hey guys, so that concludes this discussion on VTPs. Thank you for joining me. This is the first of many exciting network topics that I'll be covering. My goal is to hopefully make these topics easier for you to understand, as well as strengthening my own knowledge.
Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.